There are things you only believe after you've lived them, but I'll warn you now. Don't wish to have this experience. There are places in this world where time has stopped, where the earth is dry not just from lack of water, but from an excess of sin. My name is Viktor. I'm 42 years old. For years, I worked as a technician restoring sacred art. It was how I earned a living, but I gave it all up after what I experienced on a rescue mission deep in the Karakum Desert. I don't do that kind of work anymore, not for all the gold in the world. I was called by an old acquaintance, a professor of Oriental history who now lives as a recluse in Bucharest. He wrote me a letter, yes, a letter even in the age of email, saying that a relic had been found by nomads near the ruins of an ancient Sufi monastery. According to him, it was a ritualistic bronze lamp with pre-Islamic inscriptions, something much older than the faith preached in the region. And this lamp wept, literally. A thick liquid dripped from it every day at dusk. A phenomenon he wanted me to see with my own eyes. I arrived in the small town of Erbent after nearly 2 days of travel through suffocating heat and sand. I stayed in a mud house with a canvas roof, shared with an elderly couple of shepherds who spoke a nearly extinct dialect. At night, the only sound was the wind scratching the walls like claws of something crawling outside. I asked about the monastery, and the woman crossed herself with her sun-scorched fingers. She said that the ground breathes there. I thought it was just local superstition. It wasn't. The next morning we were guided to the ruins. They were broken columns, black stone stained with something too dark to be rust, and bones, so many. Bones, scattered among the stones, as if they had never been buried. The professor, already at the site, looked different, thinner, with sunken eyes and sallow skin. He just said, "You can't touch it, but you can see it." And then he showed me the lamp. It was grotesque, crafted with contorted faces on its body, cast in a kind of primitive and aggressive art. It was trembling, untouched, as if it were breathing. As the sun began to set, it shed the liquid, a black warm oil smelling of flesh. The professor dropped to his knees, and I began to understand that this wasn't a relic, it was a prison. And that's when he uttered the phrase that changed everything. "Viktor, I released her by accident. She has already chosen a new host." It was too late. I felt heat rising through my bones like an inverted chill. My eyes burned. My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. Looking at my reflection in the polished bronze, I saw something behind me. It wasn't the professor, it was myself, but without eyes. After seeing my reflection without eyes, everything broke inside my head. The professor collapsed onto the ground like a puppet with cut strings. His eyes were wide open, as if he had seen something his brain couldn't even comprehend. I tried to shake him, but he was bleeding from his ears. He was muttering in a language I had never heard before, even after years of dealing with relics, over 600 years old. It was a language that burned the ears, even in whispers. Desperation made me try to flee, but the way back seemed different. The stones were no longer where they had been before, and the bones were now organized, as if they had been dragged and piled in a spiral shape. In the center, the lamp, and it was glowing, a moist, pulsating glow, like raw flesh under the skin. When I tried to step outside the spiral pattern, I heard it. My voice. It called out to me. "Viktor, don't try to run." That broke me. I ran through the ruins, knocking over stone shards and tripping over objects that hadn't been there before. I felt something touch me. I didn't see it, but I swear a cold hand gripped the back of my neck and murmured in my ear, "You returned," and she waited. It was the same voice as the professor, but he was dead, right? When I finally managed to get out of the spiral, I couldn't find the way back. I was surrounded by endless sand and columns. The structure seemed to have shifted like a living labyrinth. Suddenly, I saw a figure dragging itself across the ground at high speed. It was low, with long limbs and skin full of lacerations that seemed to open and close like small mouths. It stared at me, It had eyes. My eyes. The earlier reflection was him, or me, or what was left of me in another dimension. I ended up in an underground chamber where I discovered a sequence of murals carved into the walls. One of them showed the lamp being created from a human body, still alive and melted, fused to the metal. The creature depicted had open arms and a mouth sewn shut with strands of hair. Below, words were carved into something that looked like human teeth. I translated what I could. The host does not see. The host is seen. The host is sustenance. It was then that I realized the truth. The lamp is a trap, a bait, and everyone who finds it is devoured by it, little by little. The eye, Professor, he knew. He didn't call me to see the relic. He brought me as a substitute. The creature began to follow me, dragging claws through the tunnels. Every time it passed, parts of my body started to burn. My hair fell out, my nails cracked. The lamp was sucking what I was, even from a distance. The professor's death wasn't an accident, it was a sacrifice, and I was next. If you've made it this far, it's because you're trapped in this ritual with me. But before the creature reaches the next soul, you need to make a choice. Subscribe to the channel. Yes, now. But not just for me, for you. Because this kind of content isn't just stories, they are warnings. They are marks of a world that few have the courage to face. Now tell me something in the comments. Have you ever felt like you were being watched? Even when you were alone? Have you had a reflection that didn't act like you? Share it. Seriously. Your story might be the next warning for those who need it. When I woke up, my arms were covered in some kind of dark resin, as if I had been spat out by the chamber walls. My clothes had deteriorated. My fingers were swollen, my eyes red, and my tongue was too swollen to fit in my mouth. I couldn't speak anymore. I could only hear. And she spoke all the time. The lamp. Yes, she spoke to me with old, suffocated words, but not with sounds. She spoke like an intrusive memory, the kind you're not sure if you lived or just dreamed. It was as if thoughts were injected directly into my brain. And every time she spoke, I forgot something. First, it was the professor's name, then my hometown, then my mother's voice. The lamp was rewriting me from the inside. The creature following me, now I knew, was the last host. He had been human once. I saw his face in one of the paintings next to a date, 1426. Over 500 years ago, he was there to watch, to ensure the cycle was never broken. But he had failed. He had allowed the lamp to be seen, and now he was molding me to replace him. The history of the monastery was much worse than any archaeologist would dare to admit. It wasn't a religious temple, it was a prison built to seal the entity that now inhabited the metal. The lamp was the only container capable of holding the spirit of a woman who was burned alive, still conscious, for profaning the laws of the dead. Her name was unpronounceable, but the inscription said she knew how to cross veils between worlds. She sold reunions with the dead at the price of the sanity of those who sought her out. The monks sealed her spirit in incandescent iron and kept it nourished with human blood so she would never sleep. Because if she slept, she would dream, and in the dream, she would mold the world in her image. The lamp wasn't a relic. It was a living heart, beating between dimensions. I started to feel that I was no longer on the plane I knew. The laws of gravity changed. I walked through corridors where I walked sideways, as if the floor was on the walls, and time turned to dust. Days passed without the sun or any notion of time telling me what was real. My fingernails fell off, my tears dried up, my voice no longer obeyed me. It was then that I saw her, the woman of the lamp. She had no skin. Her bones were shiny but covered by a kind of translucent flesh, as if she were in constant reconstruction. Her eyes were sewn shut, but she still saw. She saw everything. My sins, my memories, my attempts to forget. She touched my forehead with 2 fingers, long like burnt branches. And when she touched me, I saw everything. The professor, He had done this before. He had attracted young people over decades. The man with the burnt face, the first host, was a university student like me. One day, the professor chose me, and I accepted, without knowing that, upon entering that excavation, I had already ceased to exist. The woman said, "You have a gift. You have the truth. You see what should not be seen. Now, spread it." The lamp lit up again, but this time I understood what it was showing. And there was nothing more beautiful and more horrible. If you've made it this far, you've already seen too much, but now you can't go back. If you haven't subscribed yet, this is your last chance. Not out of obligation, but because maybe only you understand what's happening here. Only you can continue spreading this forbidden knowledge. This channel is our sanctuary, our modern monastery. Write in the comments, what did you see? What part of the video affected you the most? You don't need to be detailed, just feel it. Tell me with your heart. This space here is more than a video, it's a ritual. The smell of burned iron became permanent. No matter where I was inside the cave, or whatever was pretending to be a cave, the air was always saturated with the same damp heat of freshly sacrificed flesh. My feet no longer touched the ground. I floated a few centimeters above, dragged by an invisible force that seemed to want to show me something, or prepare me. In the distance I heard footsteps. Someone new had entered the monastery. It was a young man, young, maybe 24 years old, recording with a cell phone attached to a makeshift vest. One of those urban adventurers looking for abandoned places to get views. He had no idea what he was about to find. When he saw me, he froze. He started asking who I was, what I was doing there. The light from his flashlight could barely cut through the oily darkness of that place. I tried to speak. I tried to tell him to run, but no sound came out. When I tried to take a step, something moved inside my chest, as if my ribcage had reconfigured itself to prevent escape. And then she appeared again, this time more solid. The woman of the lamp now had human features, a face that was almost beautiful if we ignored the eyes, now wide open and pulsating like transparent eggs full of larvae. Her mouth moved softly, and from it came a deep, guttural melody that sounded like an inverted prayer. The young man fell to his knees. He started crying like a child, even without knowing why. I watched his eyes dilate until they exploded. Blood flowed without violence, as if it were normal, as if it were part of an initiation. And then the lamp, which was in her hands, lit up once more. Not with light, but with memory. Everything he had ever dreamed, everything he feared, everything he tried to forget, was projected into the corridors. I saw, along with him, the image of his mother being buried alive due to a medical error. I saw his younger brother rotting in a bathtub while he laughed, and worse, I saw the young man himself smiling at these scenes, as if he had seen it all before, as if he had accepted it. The lamp doesn't show what is real. It shows what could have been, what should have been, what you denied. And then, as if everything were part of a ritual repeated for millennia, the young man stood up. His eyes were blank, his tongue hanging out. He extended his hands toward me, and with a whisper that seemed to echo from within the earth itself, he said, "Your turn is over." At that instant, something left my body. I felt it, like a spine being delicately removed. My arms lost strength, my skin hardened, and I realized that little by little I was turning to stone, a statue, part of the temple, part of the monastery, a new guardian, made in the image of all those who failed before. But before hardening completely, I saw something. The young man's camera was recording, still on, and transmitting. A small red light blinking on his chest, online. Anyone who watched this far has already realized this story is not just fiction. It might look like a video, a well-crafted script, but what if it's a real record? What if what you are watching now is the beginning of something that is already around you? Maybe the lamp has already shown you something. When the young man's video was finally published, no one paid immediate attention. It was just another piece of content in an infinite sea of urban records, conspiracy theories, and low-budget ghost hunters. But something about the material caught attention. The total lack of editing, the muffled screams, the audio that seemed to echo the names of those watching in real time. The video went viral because of one detail. At minute 14:07, the camera briefly focuses on the stone wall behind the boy, and etched in dried blood, or something very similar, was a name. The name of the person watching. And it worked. People started commenting on forums. How did my name appear there? Or was it edited live? But it was always the same video, recorded days earlier. The wall always displayed the name of the user who commented. Personalized, intelligent, impossible. That's when the reports began. The first came from a young woman named Julia, 32 years old. She posted in a private group saying she had dreamed of the dark corridor of the monastery. That on the other side of the door was a version of herself, but with inverted skin and bulging eyes, who forced her to hold a hot lamp in her hands until her fingers stuck to the glass. 3 days later, she disappeared. The only thing found in her house was a camcorder pointed at the mirror. In the reflection, the background of the cave. And she wasn't the only one. The phenomenon spread. Those who watched the video, or even reactions to it, started seeing shadows on the walls of their houses. Rooms changed size. Clocks ran late or fast illogically, and in all cases, a deep sense of déjà vu, as if each person had visited that monastery at some point, in some life. Then a German programmer, curious about the phenomenon, decided to extract the video's compression code. Upon accessing the image metadata at the 14:07 second mark, the computer crashed. It rebooted, and when it came back, his name was etched on the desktop wallpaper in the same bloodied handwriting as in the video. The screen froze, displaying for a few seconds the phrase, "You accepted the lamp. She now remembers for you." After that, he went mad. He was found wandering through a train station in Vienna, saying he needed to go back to hold the light. His eyes were sewn shut with silk thread, with a perfection that even shocked the doctors. The police tried to take the video down. Platforms removed it. But it was too late. It had already been saved, shared, converted into other formats, reused in TikTok edits, and even used as background music in jump scare compilations. But the code was there, and with it the lamp. Some users who watched the video until the end claimed to have heard something beyond the screams, beyond the whispers, a breath behind them. A silent presence that starts softly, then intensifies. Many say it's just auditory pareidolia, but everyone agrees on one thing. No one who watched the whole thing could forget, and everyone who remembers starts burning inside. If you've made it this far, it means you are among the few who resisted. But be warned, resisting does not mean escaping. Subscribe to the channel now, not just to support this kind of content, but to be part of a community that understands. There are things beyond logic, beyond fear, beyond reality. We want to hear from you. Comment below. What was the heaviest moment of this video for you? Have you ever experienced something that no one believed? Your story can help other people understand that they are not alone. If this video affected you in any way, share it, but with care. You know why. And if you don't know yet, you will find out. We'll see you in the next case. If you are still here,